The Living Clean podcast is not affiliated with Narcotics Anonymous, nor do we speak on behalf of NA as a whole. We are simply members sharing our personal experiences and perspectives in recovery-based discussions. The opinions expressed here are our own and not those of Narcotics Anonymous as a fellowship. This is the Living Clean podcast. This podcast is not meant to replace meetings, sponsorship, step work, or service. This podcast is meant to be another tool in your recovery toolbox. Our guests are here to share their experience, strength, and hope with recovery through Narcotics Anonymous. Thank you for joining us. All right, welcome back to the Living Clean podcast. We're going to get kicked off with the narration of the story, The Sandwich, and then we're going to follow that with an interview by the person who lived it. Hope you enjoy.
A simple act of kindness showed this Dutch addict that he belonged in Narcotics Anonymous. He worked through his fears that a relationship with God would be bare to him because he is gay, and learned to trust the power of love. Sandwich. I remember the upstairs hallway where I was sitting. I looked at the woodwork of the stairs and thought it would hold a rope. I also knew that I would not do anything to die, even though I didn't want to go on. I looked in the phone book for a helpline. I called in and talked to a man. He said I could meet him for coffee, and that I didn't have to say anything, but if I wanted to, I could. I went to see him and tried to keep my sadness inside. I drank a cup of coffee and was glad I wasn't at home where the walls were closing in on me. The man told me about the meetings he went to and asked if I wanted to join him. I wanted to. I didn't want to be alone. Before the meeting, we went to his house. He understood, or maybe I told him, that I hadn't eaten in a few days. He made me a sandwich. That impressed me. I had done things against my conscience. I had lied, I had manipulated, and worse, I had used violence. I wasn't worth it, and still that man was there for me. He took me to my first meeting. I don't remember what was said, even though several people spoke to me. I know I cried. I remember the warmth I felt when I was with those people. I felt I shared something with them. I felt I belonged, that I belonged to them. I had never felt anything like that. I had always felt different with everybody, even my family. We lived in a village, but we weren't born there, and the people spoke a strange dialect. I went to a different school than the kids from my block. I didn't have real friends, and my older brother died when I was in elementary school. My parents were always fighting, and I was ashamed. I often fled the house with my mother. After a few hours, my father would find us and bring us back. When I was young, I learned that for adults, yelling, fighting, using, and running away were normal ways to deal with problems. I was a smart and sensitive boy with an unsafe start in life. That feeling of belonging I had at that first meeting was therefore so important. I made certain that I kept coming back. It was hard to stay clean those first weeks. Each day seemed to go on endlessly until the next meeting. When I stopped using, it was as if I had been in a deep, dark cave for years, and suddenly I stood in full sunlight. My eyes had to adjust to light that sometimes hurt terribly. Everything, good and bad, became more intense. Living without anesthesia, I didn't understand the feelings that would suddenly surface. Sometimes I thought I was going crazy. I could be immensely sad without reason, sometimes for days. Other addicts who remembered their own struggle assured me that everything would be fine. I didn't have to understand everything immediately. There would always be someone to fall back on. I was safe. I kept coming back, and it got easier. The obsession disappeared. When I was first going to meetings, I thought my problem was a recent development. I'd been having a toxic relationship with a man I thought I loved. I completely effaced myself and thought it was love. The fights, when we used, could spin out of control so badly that we would go at each other with full wine bottles. But as I opened my eyes to my own reality, I started to see that my problem dated much further back. I remembered when the alcohol came out of my pores the week of my mother's funeral, even though I was only 20. I remembered that I had fights in bars before, that relationships had ended before, that I had wanted to die before and had made pathetic attempts to do so. I had been in situations before where people wanted to kill me. This wasn't the first time I had been through any of this. But I had always tried to find my salvation in drugs, obsessive sex, relationships, smoking, etc. I'd been fleeing into addictive behavior for a long, long time. NA provided me with a safe environment in which I could say anything and share everything. This security enabled me to look beyond the last couple of years to see patterns that had been there for decades. When things got out of hand, I'd always thought that it was the result of some outside force. I was intelligent. I still had my house and job. It couldn't be that bad. If only people would see me for what I was worth. If only I lived or worked somewhere else. If only the weather were nicer. If only there had been no military service. If only my brother had lived or my mother. If only I wasn't addicted. I had my reasons. I was a victim. I learned to recognize feelings. The safe environment of NA gave me the chance to face my own fear. My fear was deep and deeply hidden. Fear that I wouldn't amount to anything. Fear of being deserted. Fear of emptiness. I couldn't fight this fear by myself. I couldn't even name it. Old feelings of emptiness and loneliness can still take hold of me. But NA's 12 steps and the people in the program, who I love so much, have shown me another way. The security, the solidarity that I get from the program gave me room to breathe. It gave me freedom of choice. I don't have to respond to situations the way I did before. At first, I didn't like the word God. It made me think of people and institutions that judge others, like churches that would ban me because I'm gay. It frightened me. I was afraid I wouldn't fit into a 12-step program. I shared this at meetings. I talked to other addicts and learned that spirituality is something personal. What matters is my understanding of God, not anyone else's. With their help, I learned to trust a power of love that is much bigger than me. When I told my father I was an addict, he told me that his father has died from addiction. My grandfather was apparently not the bohemian from the family stories. He was an addict. As a young boy, my father had to go to the pub to beg him for money for the household. That man died from alcohol after he left his wife and kids in poverty. Out of shame, my father had never told that to anyone. Learning his secret gave me more compassion for my father and more compassion for myself. I have a disease that has occurred in my family several times. I didn't choose to be addicted. I am unable to take the disease away. And other people, whether or not they are addicts, have their stories. Beginning to see how powerless I am and getting more understanding from the powerlessness of others allowed me to breathe again and has given me the space to find more good in myself and others. When my father died, I was able to be there for his widow and others as a mature man who could be a support. I don't have to approve of what I've done or what others did, but I get more and more freedom to untangle myself from a negative past, negative behavior, and negative thoughts. This has made my life extremely more beautiful. I don't have to be overwhelmed by feelings anymore. It's easier for me to let go. I am able to make more room between my feelings, my thoughts, and my behavior, room that is necessary to choose. I don't always succeed in making the right choices. I still have my dramas and my panic. I'm a human being and not perfect. But I can see a lot of progress and I'm very grateful. I am blessed. I'm in a happy relationship in which I learn healthy ways to deal with confrontation. I have friends. I am able to give love and to receive love. I am an addict. There's no longer a handicap, but a drive to shape my life in a positive way. So much has changed since the day when I wanted to die, and that man showed me I was worth caring about. I didn't even feel worthy of the sandwich he made, but I did feel like I belonged in NA, and I do. It's important for me to remain watchful. The disease is here and will remain, so my recovery should continue as well. I learn more and more to trust the endless love and power that lie in the spirituality of the program. I am no longer a victim of others or of myself. I don't have to use anymore, no matter what happens. I'm responsible for my recovery. If I fall back into an old feeling of self-pity, then I have the means to deal with it. I am not alone. I have people to support me when I ask for it. When I have a moment of despair, there will always be someone to talk to. It's not always going well, but it is always getting better.
All right, welcome back to the Living Clean podcast. Mason S. I'm an addict. We're back today featuring another story. Today we're going to cover the story The Sandwich. You have just read our good friend you have just read, excuse me. You have just listened to Xander read the story before we started recording. And now we're going to have a conversation with the individual who lived that story. And we've also got some good friends joining us as well. But we're going to get started with our introductions. I'm going to start with the co host with the most, Francis.
Francis Addict. My clean date is December 22nd, 1992. And my home group is You Are the Book Study in Chico, California. It's a great day to be clean.
All right, Francis. Go ahead and do the rest of our introductions, buddy.
Okay, well, let's move over to Ron. Ron's been traveling around the United States. I've been following him a little bit on Facebook. He's been posting a lot of great pictures, and he's a friend of the podcast. And we invited him on to join us today.
Thanks, Francis. I'm Ron. I'm an addict. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I got clean on June 7th, 1979. And my home group is the More Will Be Revealed group here in Albuquerque.
All right. And then we have Sander with us. He is an addict from the Netherlands, and he was the narrator of the story. Sander?
Yes, great to be here. My name is Sander. I'm an addict. My clean date is February 7th, 2023, and my home group is Alive and Free. It's in a place called Horen, that's above Amsterdam in the Netherlands.
Thanks for being here. And then last but certainly not least, our author, Franz.
I'm a grateful recovering addict, and people call me Frans. My clean date is August 8th, 2000, and my home group is Just for Today meeting Saturday morning here in Amsterdam.
Welcome. Really, really glad you're here.
Awesome. So, what we're going to do first is I want to ask some questions about the story, and eventually, we won't even get past the story because this is well over 2 decades ago since this was released. So, I'm really interested in what's happened since the release of this story as well. But let's start with the story. Can you take us back to the moment in that stairwell? What was going through your mind, and what made you reach for the phone?
What was going to my mind was that I couldn't stand it any longer. The way I lived, the facade was still there. I had a house, I had a job, I had a motorcycle, I had a car, but I was totally lost. And that morning I woke up somewhere and didn't even know where I woke up, and I didn't even really knew the people I saw when I woke up and stuff like that. And it wasn't for the first time. And I found my way home, and I just didn't want to live anymore. Yeah, and then I realized I'm not luckily, I'm not able to do something about that. And I just wanted to quit it all. And but not being able to put that into action felt like a failure too. And then I had to do something very drastic, and that was get the phone and phone for help. And there was nothing in my mind about let's go into recovery or something, or let's go to 12-step rooms or anything like that. It was just a cry for help. I called the suicide hotline. Kind of. But there's a real suicide hotline now, but a kind of a suicide hotline that was available. They heard what I was saying, and they offered me the helpline of us of the rooms. Yeah. So I called, and they offered me also other telephone number of professional help, like a rehab facility, but I was too afraid to call them. Um, um, and because I thought, like, if they find out how crazy I am, I never get out. So one flew over the cuckoo's nest thing. And so I called the other line, the rooms. Yes. And our own fellowship, I have to say, was so small back then that it didn't appear on the radar just yet. And I made the switch a bit later. But then the bigger fellowship then was AA, but I switched to NA pretty soon when I found out that we existed. So the first call I made was to this helpline, and the man just said, like, come out for coffee or not, or and you can talk to me, or just have coffee, or come over. And I didn't know anything better to do, so I just went. Yes, that's it. And it saved my life. Yeah.
So this simple act of kindness, this sandwich, right, where you get the name of the story, what's that come to represent in your recovery?
When I think about recovery and what I have to know about recovery, I only have to go. Sorry. It's almost 25 years ago. But it still moves me to. It's so, I can still feel it. I was so desperate. And I felt so unworthy. And this is so major what happened that day. Everything I learned about recovery, I learned in this first day. And I didn't even, my brain was not even online. My thinking brain, my critical brain was not online, which was a good thing. Though. It was lucky it wasn't online. But that first day, I went to this guy. He gave me coffee. I guess I talked. I don't even remember. And then he said, like, "Do you want to go to the meeting with me?" Like in the story. And I didn't have anything better to do. It wasn't like, "Hey, I want to go to the meeting. Good idea. I want to go to recovery." And then on the way there, he noticed that I was hungry before I even felt it. He saw me more than I saw me. And this, that he could see me, that I meant something to him, a complete stranger. after that in a meeting too. First, that's what always hits me. Like the first time in my life that I felt I belonged, and it was the first time in my life that it didn't try to belong. And that's the whole point.
What do you think it was about that room or those people or just the energy that created that feeling?
Unconditional love.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. And everything I learn about fellowship and I learn about steps, but mostly tradition, reverts back to unconditional love. Unconditional love in the rooms saved my life.
Yeah.
I'm so much a fan of the steps. There's so much wisdom in that and everything and all the text and everything. But that didn't save my life because my brain couldn't grasp that. The tradition saved my life because the tradition make that the meetings are there. It's also in our name, anonymous. I love to translate it literally, like anonymous, anonymous, no name. It's more like no labels. You're welcome. We don't put you in a box. You are this, he is that. You don't have to be anything. You just have to breathe. If you're still breathing, you're welcome. If you're not breathing, you have another problem. But so, and that's the whole point. Spirit anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, and the rest of the tradition too. Like the only requirement for membership is the desire to stop using. I desired to stop using. Yeah, I didn't know how, but oh, why did I do that? And I wasn't tested when I came in the rooms. I was just there, and I was welcome. And all my life before that, I tried to be someone, to belong, or to be loved, or to be seen. Uh, it's more like I shouted out in the way I was a hyper functional at my work or adapted to people I thought I fell in love with, like my whole codependent streak too. It was like, see me, love me, like shouting out. And when I stopped shouting and I went into the rooms, I was just knocked down. I couldn't say anything like straight anymore. Then people saw me. I was seen. I didn't have to do anything anymore to be seen. And I felt that with my whole heart. I wasn't conscious about that. This thing on top of my neck wasn't online yet, but I felt it. And that was why I came back. And that's for me, it's the fellowship.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And you mentioned struggling with self-worth and even feeling undeserving of kindness. How have those beliefs kind of shifted for you as you've stayed clean?
I'm still vulnerable for that. Like I'm not me. But that's good. Okay, it's not a barrier anymore. Is that a term? It's not hindering me in living. It's if I have that, I can be kind to myself. Like, oh, there you are again. There's this old thing, and it's also good. Um, like it also keeps me humble, not in a bad way, not in a forming way, a codependent way, or making myself smaller. But um, it's not bad. It's, yeah, it's no hindrance anymore, but it's still there somewhere. Yeah,
It's getting better.
yeah.
Yeah. You even wrote about using violence and manipulation while you was in active addiction.
Yeah,
How did you begin to face and begin to heal from the guilt and regret around that?
yeah. It's the violence is uh, uh, how I say that. Not like I was. I'm not a very violent person, and
Right.
even in active addiction, I wasn't that violent. But with in my last relationship, it was so toxic. Um, the man used a lot too, and I used a lot. And then sometimes we threw things at each other. I hit him once, and that's about the extent. But since I'm totally not a violent person, and it was so against my own conscience and against everything I believe in that. Yeah, I wrote it in the story because I found it very important to write that. The manipulation was more like being cynical or trying to manipulate people in, yeah, the mask I put on and stuff like that. Trying to sometimes to get the upper hand by being smarter and stuff like that. No. Oh, pathetic and pretty ugly. But yeah, that what happens in active addiction. Like my brain, I'm quite, I'm not bragging, but I'm pretty intelligent. But my brain gets hijacked. The intelligence get hijacked when my survival brain comes up,
Yeah.
and that's where the addiction is too. Like fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And in the fighting, I can get very ugly with words too, and very manipulative. And in the fawning, I get very codependent. And yes, and yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. Francis?
Yeah, I was. What a great story you have, and it like to me, like when I first read the intro to it, it kind of checks off a lot of boxes. Like it's an international story. It's a story from a member of the LGBT community. Um, Ron was saying before we started recording that like the sixth edition is kind of historic in that like they took translations and then they like flipped it into English and then they became part of the book. But I like the thing that really touched me the most was the kindness, like that somebody offered to you, and like little things are big things sometimes. Like offering a sandwich to somebody when you have a refrigerator full of food is just a small thing to do. And but like if you're somebody that has an empty stomach, then it's pretty big. And I've done that before. I bought somebody a burrito that was the newcomer, and he told me he hadn't eaten for 3 days, and he's 20 years later, he's still thanking me for that burrito, but it was like the smallest thing. So I'm like, well, I kind of think that you're in the helping field. That's my understanding. You've probably that sandwich has probably changed the trajectory of your life, and is like you I guess that sandwich is, like you've gotten a lot of miles on that sandwich in your ability to give back. Has that changed the direction of your life? Is that so?
Totally. Before recovery, I was in I said automation, computing, stuff like that. I was project manager. I earned a lot of money, and after that, I wanted to change my life. I wanted to do something relevant, and so um, because I could, I had to study and stuff like that. But I went to the police. So I thought that's more relevant. I went to be um, a criminal analyst, and I analyzed criminality, like a profiler kind of job. But that was half the money I earned. Then I started studying because I wanted to get back. Then I started studying, and after I think, oh yeah, I was almost 10 years in recovery, and then I finished my studies, and I started as a spiritual care counselor in the rehab, and also as a therapist and spiritual care counselor. That again lowered my salary a lot. But it was making me a lot happier, and I chose for this field because of this first meeting. It really changed my mind and my life. This sandwich in the first meeting, because this belonging, this you're welcome, and just that you know you're welcome and you belong. And to get that across to people and help them find their tribe, especially their tribe in our family, a fellowship. Now, family is a good word too. In our fellowship, yeah, that's a bit of the mission I'm on. Now I'm not a spiritual care counselor anymore. I'm not religious. Never was. I've been a spiritual care counselor for no, I said for 11 years. I'm a therapist now, pure that, not a spiritual care counselor anymore for 5 years, something. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you talked about learning about your grandfather's addiction and
yeah.
so how did that affect the view of your father and yourself when you learned about your grandfather's addiction?
Um, it, my father and I always had a very difficult relationship, and the story about my grandfather always was a bit of a romantic story. He was a circus artist. Uh, and I said that an artist, he painted and stuff like that. But in the end, he was an addict who left his family, and I didn't know that. So I I understood my father better, and he was open to what I was going through. So it brought us very close. Yeah, I know that I called him like the day after the story, and I think the same day or the next day he already came, and he didn't live in where I lived. He had to drive a couple of hours, but boom, he came directly, and that really brought us closer. What it meant for me was also that um, it's a disease. It's not my fault. Of course, I feel guilty because I have a conscience, but I am not guilty, and and uh, and that's good. And that helped me a lot. So it helped me in understanding step one too. Yeah.
So in your studies, as you learn about addiction, and I could tell that you've educated yourself just in the way that you described what was going on inside of your brain. Has that helped you in the healing process as well, gaining an understanding?
Yeah, for me it helped. It helped me. For me, it helped in gaining an understanding about the steps and uh, about the traditions even. And I'm a bit of a nerd, so I love to read books about neurobiology and especially neurobiology of addiction. And, I can spend hours reading about delta B phos and the stuff happening in your brain, and I love that. And I love to use that in my profession too, to make that stuff easier to understand. Because what, what I really don't like, what annoys me is the simple concept of addicts are these hedonistic, stupid people who just go for the thrill of it. They use dopamine shoots up, and that's what they do. Just these hedonistic stupid people, and that's not the case. It's we have a programming error. This disease is a programming error where other people also misbehave, have their behavior, I say that behavioral patterns that are dysfunctional, and they just get aggressive. They fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. The four famous or stuff like that. We have another one. We get a craving, and that's a very simple concept if you put it like that, and it's also always complicated because brain is a complicated thing. But this is the beauty of it. Like if we get into this survival mode where we have the four F's and maybe craving, we have to get out of the survival mode so that we can make better decisions. And the beauty of it all is, and you can see that in the workings of the brain too, that the only escape to get from the survival mode in the human mode, in the living mode, again, is connection. That's it. But the thing is, you need to be connected for that to work. You need a tribe. If I get into the survival mode, I get anxious and I don't trust anything and anyone anymore. And the only escape is find back your tribe. Find back your tribe. And if I make contact with a tribal fellow, then the whole thing gets online again and I can move forward. And that is so in line with the steps and it's so in line with the tradition that and I love to bring that forward in my job too. And I find that the people I work with really like can, if I explain it how it works in the brain, and I connect it to their experiences, they have something to hold on to, and they can understand the steps and the traditions better. So, yeah, yay for nerds.
I'm one of those nerds, and I've been dying to ask somebody this question for a long time. Do you not find it fascinating that before we even understood what made the addict tick, that this process of the 12 steps is such a sufficient treatment for addiction without even understanding what is actually going on inside? Is that
Yeah,
not fascinating?
it's totally fascinating, and that's also the beauty. Like it makes sense. Like if you write it down from the experiences point of view, you get to this, and science just has an explanation for these experiences, and that's good. Then the whole thing gets together. Why it is sometimes a bit vague. Like um, the I would wish for the text more reflects to sometimes I wish for the text to be more reflective of this connection thing than keeping it vague. And I don't want to offend anybody, but um, the term higher power in that sense is sometimes more vague. And and I love the steps. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to rewrite them, but it could sometimes I think like the whole connection, the unconditional love part, the spirituality therein, and yeah,
Yeah.
makes more sense. Yeah, I'm very careful with this. I don't want to.
No, I
Yeah,
understand. I
yeah.
understand. So I'll get
For me,
back to
I ask myself not what is my higher power, but what makes my power higher, and and I get more power from connection. I also get more power from eating. And if I have to explain where my sandwich for instance, comes from. I already knew I need a whole planet and a solar system and a universe for my sandwich. I'm not going to explain how this universe came about. Not even interesting, but I need a sandwich to get my power, but I also need connection to get my power.
Right. You even mentioned that, right? Like the word God was frightening. And
Yeah,
so what's helped you redefine spirituality in a way that's felt authentic and safe for you?
I had to crash one more time, and I didn't relapse. I was lucky in that sense, but I had to crash one more time, and that was for me like I started on my step 4, and I did it in a very new. How to say that? I wasn't humble. I started step 4, and I knew a bit about my history and about my family's history, what made me vulnerable for addiction. So I thought I'll be my own therapist, and I started writing, and that was a bad idea. And like I said, step 4 is totally all right, but I did one thing wrong. I did it on my own. I did it alone. Did not do it in a healthy connection to my sponsor. I tried to therapy myself, and I crashed because I opened the Pandora's box, and all the traumas came up in a massive way, and there was stuff that I didn't even remember anymore that came up that was very, very, very traumatic, and I just crashed. I had a mental breakdown, and I thought professional help. Then I wanted professional help. I thought, but it was not available or long waiting list, stuff like that, like bureaucratic nonsense that made it impossible to find it as soon as I needed it. And then I went back to because I crashed it again. I remembered my first meeting on my first day. Hmm. What saved my life? What saved my life then? And I knew what it was, and that was connection. So I said to myself, you have to do 3 things in order to get better a day. 3 things a day in order to get better, and that's call someone, talk to someone on the phone, make sure that you have a coffee date or something every day. So meet someone and talk, and it doesn't have to be about what you're dealing with, like mentally, but just meet someone and go to a meeting every day. And I did that, and that was sounds like just fun talking, go to a meeting. It wasn't. It was very difficult for me then and there. When I stepped to my car to the coffee dates, something I remember crying all the way. I was so depressed, but it saved my ass again. It saved my life again. Connection, and then this time I experienced it more consciously, and I thought like, hey, I got something here. This makes sense. Step 1, 2, and 3 makes sense now. One is pretty clear. I can't do it on my own. I'm powerless. I have less power than I need on my own. My willpower won't cut it. 2, I need more power. And how can I get more power in connecting? And 3, trust the process that if I connect to myself and other people in a loving way, I can always move forward in maybe a big step, maybe a little step, but I can always move forward. That's step 3 for me. And then step 4 and 5 made more sense too. Like, what are hindrances in this connection, in this recovery? What holds me back? What am I ashamed of? What am I guilty about? What are my secrets? Where do I have other things like the whole step 4, 5 thing, and step 6. It made more sense.
Yeah.
And then I started studying how this is more. Yeah, how does this makes sense in the brain and everything, it made more sense. And even step 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, it made more sense in that way. And so, and then I became a little bit of a man on a mission.
Yeah. The whole process seems to be about becoming more connected throughout the whole process. And
Yes,
that's the true key, right?
yes, it is. Yeah.
It reminds me of that famous study. I'm sure you're aware of it with the rat and the cocaine in the water. Have you heard of
No.
this? So they take a rat and
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Red Park. Yeah.
they
Yes.
isolate it.
Yeah.
If you have, I'll just tell briefly for people listening, in case you haven't heard it. But they take a rat, they isolate it, they give it the option of water or cocaine mixed with water. And while the rat is isolated, it 99 out of 100 times goes and takes the water with the cocaine in it. And eventually, long story short, they move the rat from isolation into a community. Still give it the same options for water, but when the rat is thriving in the community, he then prefers to just drink the water without the cocaine, which is,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yes, and the beauty of recovery, and when you go you take this direction, or it's not about just being clean. It's about living instead of surviving, not just being clean. It's making healthy decisions and um, living a happy and fulfilling life, and that's the beauty of it, and that's the wisdom in the steps and tradition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Living and enjoying life without the use of drugs.
Yes. Yeah. But it's so much bigger than just being clean. Yeah.
Let's move forward for a second. Let's go past the story for a second. Like we said, it's been roughly a little over 2 decades since the story was written and was released. So, what's been some of the ups and downs of the last 20 years plus since the story's been released? What's recovery look like since then? I know you can't go that long in life and there not be challenges, and then also some really some accomplishments or whatever. Yeah, what's it look like since then?
Like well, one of the crises I just pointed out in early recovery when I started step 4. I have been clean since this um, since the day of the story. I if you ask me that, the first thing that comes to mind is I have lived a happy life, and then I think again, and I still agree that I lived a happy life, but I lost all my family during the last almost 25 years. My father, my brother, other brother, and stepmother. I don't have any relatives who share my DNA, and I lived through that. And there were traumas that resurfaced even after this crisis, and I lived through that. And I had some very nasty experiences in my job. And I even had to have trauma therapy for that, and I lived through that. And because of our community, because of my tribe, because of my NA tribe, I never had to face my life alone. And sometimes I had rough patches, but the fact that I never had to do it alone, that I really have found my tribe in NA, makes me say, like, all these trials and tribulations, at the end, yeah, it, I still can say I have lived a happy life, and that's the beauty of it. And yeah, maybe it sounds strange, but yeah, but that's the thing. And now I'm happily married. Uh, we met each other way too early in recovery. Don't try this at home, but still we managed. And we've been together for 23 years, and I have there's a man. He's a distant relative of my husband who calls himself our son, and he has a daughter. She is our godchild or grandchild, however you want to put it. Life is good. And also these things, last things, like it has nothing to do with addiction, but it has everything to do with recovery. Like um, being loved for just living this life and being who you are. Yeah.
Oh, this is where I was going to poke Ron to share. Mason just messaged me that feel free to jump in. So before Ron asks his question, I'm going to ask a question of Ron. You had the privilege of being on the sixth edition project, and I had mentioned that we were going to be featuring the story, and you'd asked to be here. And so I was wondering if you might be able to kind of like share your experience getting to read these anonymous stories that came in, and then you had said that you had really particularly enjoyed this story, and I was wondering if you might share that experience with us about. And I realized that it was a long time ago that you read the stories, but if there was any memories that came in from that time.
Yeah, thanks, Francis. That's actually perfect because I'm not sure I have a question. We'll see in a second. But I do have some comments for you, Franz. I was sitting in that room, and it was quite a privilege to be part of the kind of outpouring from the fellowship of personal stories, and what a kind of huge responsibility it was to sort through them and make decisions about which ones were going to be included in the book. Um, and I just want to say, when I read your story the first time, and we were extremely meticulous about things like anonymity and any concerns about favoritism. We had no idea who wrote these stories or where they were from or anything like that. And I read your story, and it really touched me. It was like right at the top of the pile right away. And I think for me it was because it has a central metaphor, which is this hunger that we have. And so it's one thing to say you were hungry because you hadn't eaten it in a few days, but as your story went on, you talked about another kind of hunger, like I was just so desperate for what I saw in this meeting. And so there was like the sandwich itself was to me it represented the kind of tender mercies that our 12-step work involve. Like we just really look at each other and really care about each other and do those small things. And so to me the sandwich part itself was so powerful. But then how that translated into you when you found yourself in the meeting, and the hunger that you had for what you saw there. And it makes me think of the third tradition, that the only requirement for membership, and the way we interpret that, it seems to me, is we're not saying we're going to kick you out if you don't have this requirement. We obviously do not interpret the third tradition that way. So how do we interpret it? I interpret it to mean there is a quality that if I have it, then I can actually connect in and get the benefits of this program. And that is that inner hunger for my own kind of freedom and for something that's been elusive for me. And you recognized it in the meeting. So yeah, all of that. I felt like you captured something so fundamental to what NA is, kind of the essence of love, and then that stuff about not feeling worthy of it. I'm not even worthy of this guy's sandwich. What's he doing taking me to his house and giving me a sandwich? I'm a piece of shit. And he gives you the sandwich, and there's something in that moment that says, this isn't about worthiness. NA love, period, is not about worthiness. I don't assess the worthiness of my grandson before I decide whether I'm going to give him a present on his birthday. That's just dumb. Love does not assess the worthiness of the object of the love. And I don't know. I'm just giving you. I'm just thanking you for a beautiful story and for taking the time to write it. And I think also that thing that Francis mentioned at the beginning, that never in the history of NA, as far as I know, and I think it's true, have we included things that were written in languages other than English in our core literature. And so you wrote this story in Dutch, and that this story was then translated and included, and it just you and a bunch of others who did that kind of made history at that time, that saying, okay, this fellowship really is a worldwide fellowship, and it really is step by step by step taking on that quality. So yeah, less of a question and more of a thank you and an acknowledgement for a beautiful story and a beautiful contribution to what we have going here in NA. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sander, you have something you wanted to share?
Yes, first of all, thanks that I can attend this beautiful podcast. Thanks for the invitation, Francis and Mason, of course. And it was an honor to read your story, Francis. And it's really funny because I've written down story of connection when I read it for the podcast. So the connection part, I feel that really too. And in your case, it was a sandwich, and in my case, actually, it was that first hug. When that I get on my first meeting, and I know exactly from who I got my first hug. I see him regularly at my home meeting, and every time I say to this guy, yeah, man, I still remember, because actually, like you say, you can almost taste the sandwich, and I can almost feel that hug. It was so important for me at that moment, because I do recognize the feeling of being so lonely, when I entered the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. And at that time, I had a wife and I had my children, so I wasn't not literally lonely, but in my head I was, and the only thing I did at the end of my using period, which included more than 30 years, but the last years, the only thing I did was use, and I started at 7 o'clock in the morning and I ended at 11 o'clock in the evening. And when I came into the rooms, I came out of a world of loneliness into a world of fellowship, and that connection part for me is so important. And yeah, I could relate to your story in some other ways, like the addiction problem in the family. I have lots of uncles and aunts. I had an aunt who set herself on fire while with a bottle of booze and a cigarette in her bed. I have a mother with addiction problems. Uh, but the funny part is, I was at my dad's place the other day, last week, and I was able to do a step 9 with him. And well, he's of course not into the steps or into any spirituality, and he told me, yeah, well, of course it's a family disease, so yeah, we can't blame you. And I said, well,
then there's this magic sentence we have in this program that I'm not responsible for the disease, but I'm responsible for my recovery. And that's why since I came into this room, I visit the meeting every day because I'm really afraid for this shit, you know. I'm afraid for the cocaine and the booze and all the shit, and I really don't want that in my life anymore because when I pick up that first one, you know, I'm going to die eventually, and maybe not tomorrow, but probably next week. Yeah, so thank you, friends, for your story. I have one question in the end for you, particularly. What happened to the guy who saved you? What happened to your
No,
sandwich friend?
I have no idea. This is a meeting. There are two meetings I that are like I went to this meeting and then went to NA and so I found my home there. But then like I said, this head wasn't online then. It took me like months for instance, to hear what they were reading, like the reading cards. And that was my luck. The first couple of months, I just came to sit there and to play something, probably. I don't know, blabber something. But I felt asleep a lot of times because it was the only place that I relaxed. I was safe enough. Hmm. But I didn't hear anything. Like, I know that the first meeting, they probably talked about step one and everything, and a lot of wisdom. I appreciate that, but it didn't compute in my mind yet. And when I started hearing the cards, I almost ran out of the room. Like when I started hearing about God this, God that, God that, I almost fled. And the only reason I stayed, and that's not a pretty nice reason, but it was true. The only reason I stayed was I was more afraid to go out than to stay in. And I talked about it. I talked about it to, I opened my mouth in a meeting that I said, like, I don't know what I have to do. I want to stay, but this is not for me because God thing and this and that. And then a lot, and people came to me after the meeting, and we went to a Chinese restaurant in the red light district in Amsterdam, and everybody was talking about their higher power, and this one had a higher power like this, and the other one had a higher power like that, and the third one had like higher power like something else again. And I thought like, oh, I'm lucky. I don't have to believe in anything and what they're saying. Yeah. So, and I just skipped the two steps. I skipped step two and three. Like, okay, that's not for me, and I can believe anything I want, but it's just a mental construct, so I don't need that. And that's where this crisis came from when I started step four, because I had there was nothing to secure me, nothing to keep me safe. So when I crashed and I found my translation in unconditional love and community and connection, I revisited step two and three. And then I could do my step four. Yeah. So yes.
I I really appreciated your definition of anonymity. Ron had mentioned in one of the other episodes about the traditions being the first thing that newcomers experience is the traditions. Like he says it's kind of like the foundation and the 2x4s in the walls. Like and the steps are kind of like the pictures in the windows and stuff like that. But but when you walk into Narcotics Anonymous, you experience unity, You experience the atmosphere of recovery and all the things that the traditions provide us. And then we start experiencing the steps. But when you start talking about anonymity, like I've thought like thinking about anonymity, like I think it's selflessness. I think it's unconditional love. But when you said it's without label, I thought that was pretty meaningful for me. Like I hadn't thought of that before. But it's like quite often we not only label other people, but we label ourselves. Like you were talking about feeling unworthy, which is like a label you were putting on yourself. But like I went to a convention in Alabama where a speaker was talking about like anonymity. Like there's no male addicts. There's no gay addicts. He was saying, because he was a member of the community, and like I like that it just like equalizes everybody and it takes the labels off of us. Like maybe it takes the stigma off of us too. Like that tired old lie, once an addict, always an addict. Like maybe we'll no longer be tolerated because we do recover. And so thank you for like there was a lot you shared today, which was really meaningful. And then one of the things that's mentioned in the podcast often is that people say the opposite of addiction is connection. Like we finally make the right connection, like with a higher power, or like we fill the spiritual void. Maybe we stop acting out on like that loneliness that we have, and like we act out on the fullness of our life, making good choices. So really, man, what a powerful episode. I don't know if I had a question in there. I did appreciate the question from Sander, because I was wondering what happened to the guy that gave you the sandwich. And you said that you're not in touch with him anymore? Did he just kind of disappear? Was it the one and done, gave you a sandwich and disappeared, or?
I really don't know. Because this first meeting was very important. Like I said, my brain and everything was,
Maybe that's
I wasn't
even
online, and that saved my life too. I'm glad that my thinking brain was not online then, because if I would have heard the reading cards the first day in the meeting, I would be dead.
maybe that's even better. Maybe it's even better, like that it was kind of like an anonymous messenger to give you a sandwich, like like that he didn't, like that you still don't have a, like maybe that's even better that like he just got to be an anonymous person that gave you an act of kindness.
I know his name, and I could find him, but I'm not in touch.
Yeah. That's and I loved Xander's description of how he connected his sandwich to that first hug. And like while he was describing that, like I got a little emotional because I thought back, like the act of love wasn't even towards me that really broke, that it was towards my father who was dying, and I got to watch the fellowship come love on him unconditionally. And I'm looking at a man that, I know his complete story, and these people do too. And despite all that, they love him unconditionally. And I didn't know what that was, but I wanted it. So it's, I love the way that this part that the sandwich plays in the story, because I believe we can all find our sandwich, and it's still real to us. And I just appreciate being able to reconnect with that feeling of love that first, uh, you know, pushed me towards the rooms. So,
And I also like that hugging is mentioned, because it's just the connecting thing itself, and especially connecting like physical, is so important. It's
yeah.
so important. The rest comes later. The whole thinking comes later, but this is so important. Yeah.
We usually wrap things up with something we want to offer to the newcomer, a parting message. So I guess I could ask if you have a sandwich for the newcomer, if you would like to offer a parting message.
Yeah, my parting message would be like for a newcomer always is the same thing. You belong, you belong, you belong, you belong, and you are loved. And that's it. And the rest comes later. And that's what I try to do if I see someone new, a client or a newcomer in the room. You belong. I love you. That's it.
Awesome. Okay, well, this has been absolutely great. Thank you so much, Franz, not only for writing the story, but coming here and talking with us today. Thank our guests, Ron, Xander, thank you for narrating. Francis, as always, we will be back next week with another episode. We'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us on our Living Clean podcast. This is another platform that we can share our message of recovery, which is an addict, any addict, can stop using drugs, lose a desire to use, and find a new way to live. Join that no matter what club. You can contact us through text. The number is 931-306-9364.